Salams from the People's Dispatch Studios here in New Delhi. I'm Siddhant Aini and you're watching your favorite show, the Daily Debrief, where we look at some of the key international stories from around the world and break them down beyond the headlines. On the show today, we look at the response to Hurricane Ian from the US federal government and what the world's most powerful nation can learn from the tiny island of Cuba. We also talk about why journalists around the world are mobilizing in support of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange yesterday and today, and round things up with a little bit of scandal from the world of chess. First up, just before the tropical cyclone Hurricane Ian hit the US island of Cayo Costa in the state of Florida, the storm hit the western Cuban province of Pinar del Rio, causing damage on a scale not seen in previous storms. The World Meteorological Organization has called it one of the worst storms to hit the region in over a century. The response to the disaster, though as a natural phenomena but heavily impacted by human-induced climate change, by the governments of these two countries could not have been more different. The WMO has called Cuba one of the world leaders in terms of hurricane preparedness and disaster management, an expertise the country has built systematically since Hurricane Flora caused over 5,000 deaths in 1963. Just before Hurricane Ian hit on September 27th, over 50,000 Cubans were evacuated to 55 storm shelters, all with the aid of the government and the country's civil defense system. As a result, though damage to material goods and property was extensive, human losses were contained to a bare minimum. In Florida in the US, however, the situation was very different. Warnings came in late and people were left to their own devices to figure out how and where to get away from the storm. As a result, over 100 people have died. I had a chance to speak earlier in the day when I was looking a bit different, and I apologize for that, to our correspondent in the United States, Natalia Marquez, for more details. Natalia, welcome back to the show. Of course, we're not talking about anything fun at all on this episode. Hurricane Ian has caused massive damage across particularly the state of Florida. Could you first give us the latest in terms of the information that you have of what kind of impact has been felt on the ground?
Yeah, so Hurricane Ian ripped through Florida last week. Over 100 people are dead after that storm. And, hundreds of thousands of businesses and homes are still without power. There was a boil water notice issued in Lee County, the hardest hit county. Biden claims that this hurricane could rank as the worst in the nation's history in terms of economic damage. People are predicting economic damage up to $75 billion. Homes were totally leveled. At one point, thousands of people were in shelters and thousands of people were missing. And so, it's really devastated a lot of these communities in Florida, especially was the hardest hit, but also in South Carolina, Georgia, other states. And so, it's really like the destruction is absolutely insane. You saw images of homes, flooded up until the top floor, completely leveled. Of course, a lot of these communities in Florida, they live very close to the water. They have developed on wetlands, which, are very prone to flooding. And, without these wetland barriers to, things like hurricanes, these cities are very, very prone to being completely destroyed. So the destruction is really enormous.
So in that sense, Natalia, would you say that it's as much a crisis of sort of policy and planning? In addition, of course, we know that there's been widespread criticism of the response in terms of relief work as well.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of criticism of the response. It's been especially bad for this hurricane, but I will say, in the United States, when there is a hurricane evacuation order, the first warnings typically tell people to individually stock up on light bulbs, on food, whatever they might need, but the government does not really provide those things for the people. It's up to the individual to be able to afford to, prepare for a hurricane. And then when the evacuation order does come, the government is not out there knocking on doors and evacuating people and taking people to shelters. It's again up to the individual to find a way how to drop work, drop their livelihoods, relocate, find the means to relocate, find alternative housing, find gas money, all these different things. And so a lot of people simply cannot afford to evacuate easily. And that's why you see these huge numbers of deaths, like in a country like Cuba, where the hurricane also hit, there were around 3 deaths, because the government does take responsibility for evacuating individual people. But in the US, where it's really every man for himself, you see these huge death tolls. You see, people reported missing, all these different casualties. But in this case, it was actually, in fact, especially bad. The evacuation order in the hardest hit county in Lee County was issued less than 24 hours before Hurricane Ian hit. So that's how long people had to prepare to evacuate. And people are saying that this response was deadly, and the reason why there were so many deaths. In the Lee County jail, they didn't evacuate prisoners at all. They, simply moved them to a higher floor. And prisoners recounted to media how like harrowing their experience was. You had toilets overflowing with human waste. All these different things, no access to clean water. And so, the response was actually especially bad. But, historically, that's been the case in the US. Like when there's the system of very individualistic disaster response, you end up with all these casualties because the government isn't necessarily providing for people.
Very much for your time and for those updates, Natalia. On October 7 and 8, a global mobilization is underway to put pressure on the UK government to oppose the extradition of WikiLeaks founder and publisher Julian Assange to the United States. Rallies are being planned and staged at the offices of the US Department of Justice as well as the UK Parliament, demanding the extradition be cancelled and all charges against Assange be dropped. Multiple mobilizations are also planned in Assange's home country, Australia, as well as several other parts of the world. The International Federation of Journalists has called on journalist unions, press freedom organizations, as well as journalists like us to mobilize and express their solidarity with Assange because his work helped them expose US war crimes in both Iraq and Afghanistan. People's Dispatch's Anish has been covering Assange's persecution for a number of years now and spoke to me earlier with all the details. Global mobilizations, Anish, across several countries in support and in solidarity with Julian Assange, demanding, like I was saying earlier, sort of the cancellation of this extradition decision and the dropping of all charges. So what exactly is going on, where, and how is it all being organized?
Well, the current mobilization, the biggest one right now, is in the United Kingdom, in London, outside of Parliament House, where there's a human chain being formed, demanding that the Parliament intervene in the matter right now. Because, as we have talked about this before in the show, the case is right now quite a political one, where it's pretty much an executive decision that has been made, and that is what the Assange defense team is trying to dispute right now in the courts, in British courts. But also because the case has always been political to begin with. Now it is pretty much beyond the purview of the judiciary. The judiciary just has to say whether or not the decision taken by Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, is legal or not. But other than that, it is pretty much like the entire case, if you look at it, the very fact that the extradition is happening on charges of spying or espionage is itself a very political factor, a political charge being leveled against Assange under any normal circumstances. But as we have seen, the case has never seen any kind of normal circumstances to begin with in the past decade or so. So definitely, on the whole, this factor is being highlighted by social movements, not just in UK but also around the world. You have family members campaigning in Australia, in US, across Europe. You have supporters, members, and colleagues within the WikiLeaks talking about these things, because as we have always talked about, outside of alternative media websites, not very many people understand how important the case is and how significant it would be, whatever the outcomes would be in the coming days.
Yeah, absolutely, Anish. And the National Federation of Journalists rightly saying that this extradition, if it goes ahead, will have a chilling sort of effect on journalists. I'm not sure how much further journalists need to be to receive chills up their spine, because governments around the world are perpetrating all kinds of things, politically motivated actions and persecutions against journalists of all kinds. But we are perhaps running the risk of repeating ourselves, but it still remains vitally important to once again talk about why exactly Julian Assange's case is so important for press freedoms around the world.
Well, to begin with, the very extradition part is the most alarming thing in this case right now. It's not even the fact that there's a a federal charge or a set of federal charges against Julian Assange, but the fact that the US is trying to hound someone, to pursue someone in a foreign land, a foreign citizen to begin with, for reporting about their war crimes that they have committed in Afghanistan, Iraq, and other places, which they have admitted to. Let's begin with that. On basis of evidence that is quite baseless at some level, quite exaggerated, and in some cases includes falsified testimonies by people who have admitted that it is falsified testimony. So it is a whole set of things that is wrong with this case, but it is just this very pursuit of this one person, because he revealed so many of their classified documents that showed that their war crimes is real and not just something that the left has been talking about for so long, or the anti-imperialists have been talking about for so long. But it is something that is happening, and the scale is much larger than what people had assumed to begin with, and not just includes the United States, but also other countries. So it is just this very single-minded pursuit against this one journalist and this one media house. Obviously, the scope of their work is much greater; it's quite global, but is definitely trying to send a message. And the fact that it is happening across administrations, it's not just one president or one political leader trying to hound Assange. It began under Obama, it continued under Trump, and it is now continuing under Biden, where the administration is completely hesitant to repeal the cases, which could actually end this entire process, and the fact that he's being jailed for nearly 3 years now, and in a high security prison, which is for federal crimes and capital punishment. But that is something that the Biden administration is not doing. So it is definitely trying to send a message that expose more of our war crimes, you will be having similar kinds of hounding happening against you. And it is happening across different countries as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. You're spot on there, Anish. And thanks very much for once again stating the importance of this case. And we're rounding off this weekend episode of the Daily Debrief with a little bit of scandal, a little bit of gossip, and perhaps a little bit on the battle for the soul of the game of chess. After a gap of several years or maybe even several decades, the sport is back in the limelight after major brief between two of its most prodigious practitioners, world number one Magnus Carlsen and US Grandmaster 19-year-old Hans Niemann. While the less I say about my own chess playing abilities, the better, I did get a chance to speak to Anirban Ghosh on the subject earlier. Anirban is a genius level musician and a keen chess player who's been following this story as it unfolds. Ban, of all the subjects I thought we might chat to you about on Daily Debrief, I didn't ever imagine chess would be one of them. But the game is back in sort of in the news, in the spotlight, with this beef between Carlsen and Niemann that's broken out, and looking at essentially, I suppose, the soul and the spirit of this sport. Before we get into all of those bits, though, can you just summarize what exactly is going on for those who perhaps don't follow the chess world that intimately, and who might not be aware of the entire controversy or the scandal to begin with?
To begin with, I would say that Magnus Carlsen, who actually quit his title, and Hans Niemann is like one of the youngest sort of grandmasters that FIDE just gave him this grandmaster title. He's 19, And his thing was that because he always wanted to play like Carlson, so he was like this guy just quit the title. So before I didn't get to beat him. So he was, I think he really wanted to sort of it's like a thing that you carry on for life, that I have beaten the grandmaster, ex grandmaster. So I guess that, so they were trying to play these sort of chess games different places. So what happened was, at one of the games, like, he did this sort of really unpredictable move, and Carlson lost that game. And then another game, Carlson and this guy, they were playing. So literally, Carlson did one move and he just walked out. And even the earlier game, he walked out. And later, he sort of alleged that this guy has been cheating. So a lot of people, then that completely shook the entire sort of chess world, and people were like, what's happening, like, how can you cheat like this in a live game? I mean, online I can understand, like, if you have multiple screens, and these are all also big money. There's big money in all these games. So you're playing like for $1 million, and you have like multiple screens running. So on one screen you can have like a sort of a chess engine telling you the right moves, and then you're playing on another screen. So I mean, when there's money involved, all these, I guess, then the sport also becomes sort of just to win. People don't play to sort of, it's not like back in the day when people used to play a sport to play a sport. Now it's like, even I guess back in the day, people would be innovative and creative about cheating. But so Hans Niemann, like, online, he was caught cheating using bots, like AI bots, and offline, all the offline games, he was caught cheating, like wearing anal beads, which is like, I don't even know how that works.
Just very quickly to sum it up, Ban, as a chess player and a chess lover and an enthusiast, and I guess you also belong to communities who feel the same way about the game. Is this current controversy or scandal, or however you want to term it, is this kind of bringing into question the future of the sport and how it's run?
I guess it's a very important conversational topic, because see, a lot of chess games have moved online. I mean, due to the pandemic and people started playing online, there were these so many websites that just, and apps. Magnus Carlsen also has an app. So so people started playing. I mean, the popularity really increased for chess. But at the same time, like, I don't know if I'm playing now after this. I don't know if the guy I'm playing, or the girl, or whoever I'm playing against, I don't know if that person is using a bot, or beating me like in 9 moves. Was that this person, or was it a bot? So I guess
Right.
there is that sort of, you do feel sad that uh, but Siddhant, there are all kinds of people in the world, man. You have to sort of find a way to navigate and do your thing. What I like is what Magnus Carlsen also talked about. He's like, I'm done with, because nowadays most games are being predicted and run by chess engines, and so where is the human mind in it? So that's why I think that was his reason to quit, like the grandmaster title. He's like, I don't want to do it anymore. I want to uh, go back to, like, so that's why he gives a lot of emphasis on blitz, like the quick games, because there, like, your human mind is sort of doing all the calculations and also making the mistakes. So for me, it's actually the imperfections and the mistakes that make it human, versus playing a perfect game. You might play a perfect game like one in a million, but that's the thing. I guess that's what ticked Carlson off with
Ticked
this
him
guy.
off.
Yeah.
And absolutely, Ban. We thought we'd have a bit of a chat, a bit of like scandal, a bit of gossip, and all of that. But it ended up on a bit of a philosophical note, not just from a chess perspective, but an overall perspective of why humans engage in these kind of activities and sport in general. So thanks very much, Ban, for that perspective and for taking the time to talk to us today. That's all we have on this episode of the Daily Debrief from all of us here at People's Dispatch. Thank you very much for watching. We'll of course be back on Monday with a brand new episode. Until then, for details on all of these stories, as always, please head over to our website, peoplesdispatch.org, and don't forget to follow us on the social media platform of your choice. Thanks once again for watching. From me and all of us, goodbye.